It's Tom Perry from Sherpa Marketing here. Thanks very much for joining us on our webinar this afternoon on MDF and reviving a broken system. We've got a chat pane for you to ask any questions as you go, or please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask away as we run through some slides. We're going to shoot for about half an hour this afternoon, and we'll make the recording available on demand as well. So without further ado, we'll get cracking. I'm Tom Perry. I'm the founder of Sherpa Marketing. I've had extended periods in both resellers and vendors in the technology channel. Now running Sherpa, the agency, I've sat in your seats for quite a while. Sherpa is now in its 6th year. We're one of the UK's top 70 UK B2B agencies, an award we won last year. And our kind of purpose in life is around creating demand for tech products and services. We have a multidisciplinary team here at Sherpa. We go to market in two main ways, either direct to end users or through channels. And we have an expertise in channel marketing that has also pushed us down the account-based marketing route in the recent 18 months. And we work on multiple platforms. So that's just a little bit about us. We work at all three levels of the channel, and so we felt reasonably confident in our ability to put together a white paper or a kind of blueprint on a better way of doing MDF. We've worked for both vendors providing MDF services and also help resellers interact with their disties and their vendors in trying to drive better results from MDF programs. We've been doing that for about 3 years, and so we feel like we've built up kind of a wealth of knowledge around what's working and what's not. And if you put that in the context of some of the services we deliver in our portfolio, which you can see on screen, I'm going to concentrate today really on the channel marketing side of things, how we look at ROI reporting, and I'm going to touch on account-based marketing as well. So the kind of route for you to get here was that you downloaded our blueprint. We called it the death of MDF. I think we probably want that to be a resurrection of MDF. We don't want it to go anywhere, but we do think that the current system has some challenges that have really developed operationally over time. And just wanted to highlight some of those and what we see is in the current environment. So certainly something we're seeing is that MDF budgets are reducing kind of across the piece. And that means that less partners are receiving MDF, but also the amount per partner is coming down as well. And if you couple this with a bigger pressure for ROI, what we get to is that sometimes this ROI is never delivered. We see lots of campaigns, we deliver some, and we know how important ROI is becoming. One of the other dynamics we see a lot of is that we have, in most cases, probably 9 out of 10, we've got a quarterly approach to MDF. And that can be in quarter, and that's not healthy. Sometimes we have planning for activities happening in week 1, week 2, week 3, even to week 4 and 5 in a quarter, meaning that if you then have to report on that activity by the end of the quarter, you're giving yourself a kind of only a 6 to 8 week window once you've built some campaign materials into which to operate. And we don't think that's in any way long enough, A, to optimize campaign tactics, but also drive out the results that everybody, vendors, disties and resellers all want to see. So we also think that, when there is MDF, it's spread a bit thin. Vendors will try and support multiple numbers of partners. And we think that sometimes a step back and consideration to support less partners with more money but a more involved process is certainly where you can certainly start to drive more significant results. And more significant results in the MDF arena are good for all parties. So we often see as well that funds are systemized. They're put onto a platform of some sorts. They are passed through to the reseller, either direct from vendor or from the distributor. And really, once those funds are on the system and allocated and agreed, it leads to this almost lack of focus. Yeah, the reseller is interested in how the campaign's going. The disty will check in very occasionally, and the vendor will just want to make sure that the activity is happening. And we think that that's detracting from the quality of the campaigns that are going out the door. If you if you kind of bundle all this together, we've kind of got a situation where we have limited tactics that can be used in the time available, and also that it doesn't allow for the optimization that we think we should occur. So moving on, this is the environment that allowed us to write the kind of blueprint that we did, and certainly want to now move into what we think is a far better way of delivering MDF campaigns. So if we consider the environment we find ourselves in, we know that in today's technical or technology buying cycle, marketing is having to work a lot harder and further down the funnel than it ever did. And so a lot of education and what we call active buying is happening before people even pick up the phone to a vendor or a partner. And that's quite, I mean, that's common knowledge in the marketplace today. But it does mean that your marketing in any kind of guise, and especially under MDF, where you've got this kind of short-termism manifesting itself, is that you've got to do more marketing in a shorter pace of time, because 60 to 70% of that buyer journey is going to be done online. It's certainly going to start online, and then it's going to morph into the sales process. If you throw in some, the great thing we're all dealing with at the moment, GDPR compliance, you have quite a complex environment where marketing is asked to do any number of jobs. And that could be driving more targeted traffic, that's the starting point, right through pushing opportunities through the funnel with various pieces of content and tactic. And ultimately, the end game and the measurement for any MDF is the number of quality leads that we're going to deliver to sales. And so when we manage campaigns, we do think that there are certain nuances that you should be aware of. And we've found kind of these elements out almost from running probably around 55, 60 channel campaigns last year. Certainly we've got the consumer is in charge of the environment, the information exchange, and they are dictating when they engage, and that links back to the last slide. But also, those consumers are doing something that is of benefit to us, and they're leaving a very, very big digital footprint. And that allows marketeers like myself access to multiple data sources where I can interrogate those and see what people have been up to, so I can provide a better level of intelligence to my sales team. We also know that engagement levels are requiring more touch points than they ever did. We see up to 12 kind of touch points needed before people engage. And also that, the eyeballs you're trying to attract are no longer solely in, at exhibitions or in email inboxes or doing networking events. They're very much starting that journey online. And one of the dynamics we find in the channel and the channel structure is that your marketing needs to keep up with these tactics, and often it doesn't. And there's a number of reasons. In vendors, we find that the teams are very defined in the tactics that they deliver. In vendors, we don't think you can do all of the things that you need to run a kind of demand generation campaign. And so it's kind of hard to keep up with where you need to be. So if we move on to look at what we consider to be a typical end-to-end marketing campaign. Now this can be, normally these are delivered direct to the end user on behalf of a channel partner, maybe with vendor funding in the MDF route or even direct. But we know that there's four main elements within a campaign. And this is just to give you a flavor of how we operate. Inbound and content marketing is still a very central pillar large central pillar of any campaign. We need to have the story straight between vendor and reseller. That's quite an intricate relationship where there will be a lot of content at vendor level, and then resellers will be looking to adapt and take that into the marketplace, but with their spin on it. And so inbound and that whole let's get found and let's get our content found is one of the cornerstones of any campaign. As an agency, though, we then know we have to layer in search and display advertising across social networks. LinkedIn, certainly, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are all playing in campaigns we've got live at the moment. The great news here is it's very, very visible. It's very controllable. If you add in the Google network as well, you've got a layer of intent from the person searching. And so what we're trying to do with these tactics, this core set of tactics and core platforms, is we're trying to get real-time interactions into an inside sales team on behalf of, you as the partner or the vendor, and we're trying to push leads into the funnel. Well, we also know that, about 70, 80% of leads that engage are never ready to buy exactly at that time. And so what we are doing is we have to bring in a remarketing or nurturing layer. And within some of the platforms, you have the opportunity to remarket, but also we use a lot of email nurturing so that these campaigns, when they have a length, length to them, that we are able to nurture people through. And really what you're doing is you're saying, within any 12-week cycle, we'll always create a pool of leads that can be remarketed to next quarter. So it envelops a kind of ongoing need to keep campaigning. And the final layer of any campaign is really where we as an agency working on channel marketing campaigns start, really earning our corn, as it were. And it's the optimization refinement layer. We never have a situation anymore where we set a campaign up and let it run. We will normally check in to a campaign somewhere between 8 and 10 times and stop and refine and optimize both messaging and tactics to get better results. And we know we can get a 40% uptick in lead numbers by having this optimization process in play. And what we're really trying to do is that we're saying, okay, this one platform has performed okay, but it's not as good as platform B, and we're going to reallocate budget and tactics and messaging into it. And it's an involved process, but it's one that's totally necessary in terms of getting results from campaigns where they need to be to keep both vendor providing MDF and reseller and disti as the kind of the channel that's executing these campaigns with an agency like ourselves happy. So that's how we see kind of campaign elements, and that's book standard. But one of the key skills that you need in any MDF campaign is you need the ability to operate on multiple platforms. And this is just a selection. This is probably around 65, 70% of the platforms we've operated on in the last 6 months. But you can see within a partner campaign, we need to bring together various elements. And if we start from kind of midday and work right, we do a lot of work on intent. That's where we are looking for data sources that have a higher propensity to buy your services by matching the keywords that are being pushed into the internet. We also then have decisions of where we're going to work on email platforms. Those could be the partners' email platforms. It's normally our in-house platforms that we segregate and manage data for customers, but certainly that's a feature we can bring to the party. We then obviously have an element of integrating into CRMs. This might be the vendor CRM, it might be reseller, it's probably a combination of the both in most instances. And so Salesforce and HubSpot and Marketo and certain other platforms will play in here, and we need to be able to operate on all of them. This is where we start to, delivering the visibility that everybody wants to see around MDF. There's obviously the social platforms I mentioned where we're normally providing advertising services, which is paid, but we also use organically. And so that moves into AdWords, AdRoll, and then the final part of this jigsaw is we're probably going to use a form of content syndication to get those messages that you've got in the campaign out to a wider audience. And so the real skill of any multi-layered campaign is knowing which platforms to pull together and how we're going to use them. And that's one of the things that an agency will bring to the table. But it's also one that ensures results and visibility are kind of at the forefront of everything we do. So if we looked at next, we just have another look at an example campaign, and this is more of a Gantt chart and a timeline. There's really three key stages to any campaign that we put together for a channel partner, and you can see this is the minimum time scale we would recommend at 12 weeks. So this doesn't include the initial discussion about the fund allocation or adding things to an MDF based system. This is right, okay, we've got the money, now let's go. And so you can see that there's normally a kind of, in any 12-week cycle of campaigns, we put a 3-week typically process on the front end. Now we have shortened this down to a week and a half, 2 weeks, but if you can imagine that you are having a conversation in January, then within that quarter, then you are you're looking at 3 weeks really before you even get something kind of out the door to people. So, but what we do in that is we're doing a lot of data work, we're doing a lot of planning, we're looking at content, we're looking at all of the campaign elements with the channel partner, normally the reseller, and saying this is how we want to go to market. And it's a very, very involved two-way process. We find that most resellers have amazing knowledge at the coalface in the sales arenas in which they operate. So whether that be a kind of video conferencing, networking, software as a service, there's this wealth of information that we need to try and get under the skin of the sales teams, but we're normally working with marketing teams to go and do it. And so the build phase is very, very key. That's also where we are looking for intent surge report, and we're looking for people who are trying to find your product bit ahead of the game. So we start all these campaigns with a really kind of defined data set that's going to ensure better results. When we move to the kind of campaign going live piece, which is, starts here on this example at week 3 and week 4, you can see that we're layering in inside sales, retargeting, social and Google ads, one email sequence. We're doing this. We also do some content syndication. But the important thing is actually not these layered on tactics, although, most of the campaigns we do have all of these in. The important thing here is that we're looking at these, they kind of look like furlong markers here, 1, 3, but what we're doing is we are managing and optimizing. So we're almost stopping the entire campaign, once during the first week, and you can see it moves at slightly different paces, different kind of size gaps here. But what we're doing is we're saying, okay, what's working well, what's not working well? It might be that AdWords is not performing as well as it should, and we need to divert more money into, let's say LinkedIn advertising, which is very, very targeted around job roles and job titles. It might be that certain subject lines in emails are not working well. So this is one of the most important things we find. If we're going to deliver decent MDF campaigns, there's got to be this stop-start mentality that drives towards a defined set of results, and we're trying to get to that magic ROI. So a couple of other points just to notice here. We always kind of have a half time in any time in any sort of 12-week block, and that really is a full drains up with all parties. That's good practice. We find that sometimes in those time periods that things change with vendors or the materials, or they might have some new intelligence to bring to the party, and certainly that's a key activity as well. You've got lots of small stop starts here, but a major kind of review here. And then if we look towards the back end of any campaign, the onus on us at an agency is to prove what's gone well and share that best practice. So we normally put a best practice workshop together, which we invite vendor, disty, partner to, and it's controllable. We can invite who we like. But also at that point, we'll have a whole bank of what we call POE, or proof of execution, which us as the managing party here should be able to upload into any systems that where we need to show things. So if we consider that we've got some elements to a campaign, we've got a kind of timeline and a Gantt with 3 defined sort of stages to it, The one thing that most MDF campaigns we see is they lack visibility. And it requires sometimes a manual check-in by either party. Oh, how's it going? And so what we advocate here is full campaign dashboards live that are available to all partners. Login provided. You can. Or we will send these out to parties, and we're asking people to, and we can talk them through this to show what's going well. And in this example, we've got email, we've got web, which is basically landing pages, we've got social stats across a couple of platforms. And this report can elongate or become shorter as we need it to. But this level of visibility is hugely, hugely important for everybody concerned. If 7-8 weeks into a 12-week block of campaigning, things are going well, you are far more likely to get a better response if you then want to discuss repeating the campaign next quarter. Okay, so this visibility is really, really key. And if you are a reseller that has a campaign that's been funded by one of your vendor partners, having this visibility and saying, hey, this is going well, or, we're getting there with the results. We've got the hockey stick going on where results get better towards the end. I'd like to discuss how to run this again next quarter with a few tweaks and maybe bring in a new product set in. That's a very healthy discussion, rather than rushing to your vendor on January the 3rd, for instance, and saying, hey, what's going on with the MDF this quarter? We've got some ideas. And so the visibility, we think, is really key. The other point with visibility is the number of stats that we actually drive out of any campaign. There's just a kind of selection here. We're going to be looking at the campaign overall, and that's going to come down to lead numbers, and it always does. Whichever layer of the channel's looking at it, the starting point is, hey, how many leads have we developed? And then we're going to get into where they've come from, which might be how we're converting, whether they're coming from email, social platforms, paid traffic. We want to know how landing pages have been performed and tweaked. But what we do is we're building and building and building. We're building a really kind of involved data bank that says, okay, this is how we went to market, this is the results we drove out, and this is what worked well. And this bit is so often missing in MDF campaigns, where you are expected to upload maybe a view of some of the materials, an Excel sheet with some leads in, and then potentially that's as far as you're asked by your vendor. We think there's a wealth of information that should go into this, and you should keep, as the reseller, share with vendor partners or vice versa to say, okay, what worked well. Now, the key management for vendors here is actually that you need to manage with your internal teams, that you're not treading on toes. But any good MDF program would have people who are doing that job day in, day out. So campaigns longer, more involved, multi-tactic, multi-platform, wealth of data being driven out. One thing that we think then is a really good idea is to share the best practice. So this is an example. We put a half-day workshop together for Tech Data, and we ran it under their agency brand, but it was on Microsoft, the product here. And we took time to educate resellers and reseller marketing people and sales to a degree on what worked well. And so this was a very, it's warmly received, and you can take these initiatives back to your reselling business and try and implement some of the best practice. We've got a couple of case studies here, one for Tulare Networks, just to show the level of involvement and the multiple tactics here. I won't go into this in too much detail. We can always have an offline conversation around this, but you can see there's Google AdWords, there's LinkedIn advertising, there was a big email part here. It was a longer term one. We always publish these results that are underneath, and actually this was nominated for a kind of B2B marketing award for best social campaign, and we got some very heavyweight names to engage with this campaign because the tactics were right. And so when you can show some of these logos in your proof of execution, then you are going to be looked on favorably for funds in the next quarter. We're also running a campaign at the moment which is called Partner Account-Based Marketing. This is where we're helping some of Sage's larger partners, a very select number, get into larger accounts which aren't been targeted by the internal teams at that vendor. We've got a 7-step process here. It's very involved. There are tactics and activities on either side. Sherpa does a lot in the middle here, but you've got partners and Sage and us as the agency working on a really defined set of activities. So I think what I'm trying to do with the Talari and Sage things here is show you the breadth. You can have, short-term 12 weeks. These campaigns are going to run for 6 months as a minimum, but you need to craft your campaigns either from account-based marketing at the top, maybe mid-market, maybe SMB. It just depends. And we normally do a lot of discovery in that build phase on a campaign with people to kind of get this right. So just in the interest of kind of keeping us to half an hour, I just wanted to summarize where we think you can improve MDF at any level of the channel. This is the summary we took out of the PDF we put together. We think there's fundamental flaws, but really there's a better way of doing MDF. And if you can have, proper conversations about length of campaigns, duration, tactics that involve platforms, how the reporting works, how the visibility works, then everybody's going to start in a much better place. So we think that vendors must support their top resellers with defined plans and kind of ROI. There's a two-way street of negotiation here. In an ideal scenario, we'd be planning for next quarter in the end of month 2 in the current, because that will give us a decent amount of time to put campaigns together. Now, we know that's very hard to do. Vendors don't always allocate money on time, but I think if as a reseller you're on the front foot saying, I've got an idea for next quarter, can I have a conversation about it? I don't think there's any vendor who will say, well, no, we need to wait until the beginning of next quarter. I think you can get on the front foot with these things. We've talked about 12-week minimums. We also have talked about visibility and weekly optimization. But I think one of the other things that you probably do need to consider is how you track revenue at the end of the campaign. And I think most vendors have a deal reg system or process in place that allows this to happen. So if you run a 12-week or a 24-week campaign, which is would be a good thing, some of that revenue might not be visible at the time. But if you have deal regged opportunities that come out of the campaign, then you have transferred some of the onus of responsibility and reporting into your sales function, and there should be a closed loop system that can do it. So we also think that MDF is becoming more discretionary and is going to be awarded on the basis of merit. And I think you should also share marketing best practice from successful campaigns. And really for vendors and resellers, the message here is support a smaller number of your top partners better. So resellers get on the front foot and ask for funding ahead of time. Vendors, talk to them, look at the merits of the campaign and consider awarding money for the 12-week plus duration. So that's as much slideware as I wanted to just go through today. So our role here at Sherpa within our channel marketing has been around helping resellers with their MDF submissions. We've also worked with vendors on their bureau services and how they run through partner campaigns. And so if any of this is of interest to you, we'd be delighted to have a further chat. We have recorded this webinar. We'll make it available if you wanted to send it on to people within your wider teams. So really, from my point of view, just to say thank you very much for joining us today. My details are there. I'd be delighted to answer any questions you've got. I don't think we've got anything in the chat pane at the moment, but if there's anything, please kind of let us know. Pane that I think we'll take offline in the interest of time. So once again, thank you very much for attending today. I hope you found this useful, and we hope to catch up with some of you in the near future. Thanks very much.